Okay, so well, in 1999, working with a friend of mine that had some experience managing a bar, we opened the Whiskey Rock on Buford Highway. Uh, what at the time I like to call it off of Buckhead, um, since the Buckhead scene was quite the nightlife at the time with 24-hour clubs and other things that don't exist anymore. But what we did was it was a building that had a capacity of about 200 people, and we could do shows there. So when we got the facility, we rebuilt the stage, made it somewhat larger, and set it up for bands to come in and do their show. Totally changed the sound system, upgraded it significantly, and we would have typical night at the Whiskey Rock. Tuesday through Thursday would be 5 or 6 local bands, and you hope they brought 15 or 20 people that were old enough to have a beer. And but it was fun. We met a lot of local bands, and of course we had to check IDs carefully, make sure everyone was old enough to have a beer, or sell them a Coke instead. And then, but on the weekend, on Friday night and Saturday night, we would try to book better known local bands or someone who's touring that we could get to come in for a show. They might have a show in Atlanta on Friday night, and we'd have them come into the Whiskey Rock on Saturday night, or they might have a show 100 miles away, and we'd have them come in. But we work with the touring groups to find who can we get to come in inexpensively, and book that a couple weeks ahead of time, and promote it with creative loafing and on the radio, and get a good crowd turnout. So several times we only did that for a year, but I met several bands. And one of the bands I worked with, I was at that time I was going to New York often to work with business concerns, and so I'd take care of my computer-related business during the day, and when I get to the end of the day there, I'd meet the band at their practice space in New York, watch their practice for an hour or two, then we'd go get dinner, and then we'd go out and explore the New York scene, to usually ending up after midnight at one of the after hours places that the music people would hang out in, and got to know several of the writers for Rolling Stone, and several of the A&R people for different labels, many of which don't exist anymore. But with that band, we ended up having a showcase at CBGB's, which, if you know, is one of the famous music venues that's been closed down in New York. But at that time, it was the famous place to get found in the music industry. And we did a showcase one evening. Only had about 20 people there. The band's lawyer, a couple of people like me that were helping the band, and most of the other people were A&R guys from different labels. We ended up, and that band was called Stereo Mud. We ended up getting them signed on Sony's higher level distribution label, and they did 2 albums before they broke up. So that was interesting to learn that the music business is a business, and working with other bands that were at the Whiskey Rock. Part of the message was, if you want to be successful in music, you got to treat it like a business. Get stable in your living condition. Get a day job that'll let you leave at a reasonable time on Friday afternoon, so you can travel to venues to work on Friday and Saturday night. But make sure you're able to pay the rent and
Show up to your gig.
survive while you're writing your music and getting your band started. And that's still true with the entrepreneurs I work with today. Is make sure you've got a stable situation. If you're going to go full time working on your venture, make sure you've got a way to pay the rent.
Yeah, your parents, right? Great. Works for me.
Well, that's one. Yeah. There's many ways. When I started Hayes, when I started the modem company, I realized that myself, and so I said, okay, I'm currently paying so much monthly rent. I realized if I went and bought a house, instead of paying $500 or $600 a month of rent, I could be paying $350 a month house payment. So I went and bought a house to stabilize my housing expense, because I knew that if I was paying a mortgage, the price wouldn't go up next year the way it would if I rented an apartment. And so I created a stable situation for living, and having spent years at Georgia Tech and living in an apartment, I knew how to cook and take care of all that stuff. And it was, stabilize the living expense so that you can live really, really inexpensively while you're starting the business, and don't expect to go out and have fancy dinners or do a lot of expensive dating or anything like that, because
no time, no money.
In other words, be realistic
Yep.
in your
situation
analysis.
that you're starting at.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Situation analysis. Be realistic.
and realize that if that's what you want, then go get a high paid job,
Right.
and enjoy that until it burns out.
Right.
But if you want to start a company, be the master of your destiny, it requires some sacrifice, but you can manage that so it's not so bad, and look forward to the day when you'll make a lot more money. And work on getting the business up and running. When you make a lot more money, then you'll get tired of those fancy dinners. You'll get tired of being asked to sponsor a table at one fundraiser or another. You'll get tired of the entertaining side of supporting the business at some point. But also going to the trade shows and those type of events was a big benefit, because you could meet a lot of people in a short period of time, and get a lot of feedback from people if you were willing to ask them open-ended questions and listen to what they had to say.
No.